And we kick off this evening with a look at the cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
Cinema history come to life.
I found my solace in the small cinema I went to every Thursday night.
I'm a professor of cinema.
I go to the cinema for the stories.
There was no competition between the cinema and seminar.
I mean, it's not within the realm of conventional cinema.
And now,
here's Payson Johnson
with a cinema review.
It is Monday, November 27th, 7 EST, and thank you for joining me for another exciting episode of Cinemaster's Reviews. Hope everyone had a very happy Thanksgiving. Hope you had a lot of good food. Hope you got to spend some time with your family. Hope you just had a really nice, few days off. It's always fun to get that, refresh just towards the end of the year before we hit the main holiday schedule in terms of Christmas or any other holiday you celebrate. And one of my other favorite reasons why I love November is because we start having so many movies, and we're going to be talking about a few of those today. We're going to be talking about Ridley Scott's new film Napoleon, as well as the new Disney animated film Wish. No guest this week. I'm going to be going it solo. I always love having a guest, but I'm starting to enjoy these solo reviews more and more. Used to not be the biggest fan of them, but I usually just have so many thoughts about these movies that it's nice to just air them all out here in a nice, succinct way. But I say we all head into our first review of the night, and that being Napoleon, as I said, directed by Ridley Scott. This is his second collaboration with Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin Phoenix, of course, plays the title role of Napoleon, and as you might have guessed, this is about Napoleon, not Dynamite, but Napoleon Bonaparte, the French soldier who was a general and eventually became French emperor, and his years ruling France, the 61 battles that he led France into, and the many, many French soldiers that died and perished through his reign. As the movie goes on, we see not only Napoleon's relationship with the country of France in general, but also Napoleon's relationship with his wife Josephine, played by Vanessa Kirby. Going into this movie, Ridley Scott is one of those filmmakers who I think you got to give the man props. I think every movie he makes, he never phones it in as a director. He is always someone that makes his movies big. He never tries to go for the run-of-the-mill generic movie. It never feels like he's phoning a movie in. Whenever you see it, you always feel like he's putting all of his heart into the movie, all of his effort in the movie, even if the script he's working with isn't quite the greatest script in the world. Every single Ridley Scott movie looks incredible, and I think that is just because he has such an incredible eye for the camera. He's such an incredible technical director, even though the scripts he chooses might not be the best in the world. Ridley Scott is one of those filmmakers that, to me, can't really elevate the material he's given, but if he's given amazing material like something like a Blade Runner, or like an Alien, or even a few years ago like The Last Duel, I think you get incredible, incredible films. Napoleon is a movie I like, but I definitely do feel like the script was probably the weakest element of the movie. But I'm going to get into that later. I want to talk about the things I liked, and the first thing I did like is, like I said, Ridley Scott's direction in how he directs this movie is incredible. I think every single movie by him just has this huge air of just feeling big. It just feels grand. I talked about this with Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, where a Nolan movie also has just that feeling that you're watching something bigger than your normal movie. Ridley Scott knows how to really capture that sense of scale. Even something like a few years ago when he did House of Gucci, which is this biopic on the family who made the Gucci clothing line. Even that felt huge. Even that felt grand. And when Ridley Scott is doing a historical epic, whether it's Gladiator, whether it's Kingdom of Heaven, whether it's even like Robin Hood, which isn't that good of a movie, he is always able to make it feel grand and epic. And that is how this movie feels whenever you have these huge expanses of the French castles, or whether you're watching Napoleon literally going to Egypt and conquer it by blasting the pyramids and watching them fall, watching parts of the pyramids fall. You just feel like you are watching an event. And I love the fact that Ridley Scott is still at over 80 years old able to make these huge movies feel like event cinema in a way. Joaquin Phoenix, I think, is one of the best actors we have working today. And whether it's The Master, whether it's You Were Never Really Here, or whether it's his Oscar-winning role as Joker, you can always expect him to not quite do what you're expecting. He always loves playing these tortured characters, and the way how Napoleon is written in this movie, he's definitely tortured, but maybe not in the way you would expect. I would say throughout history, I've like kind of gotten the idea that Napoleon was kind of like this like diabolical genius in a way. He was able to command the French army in incredible ways. He was an incredible like strategist when it comes to battle. And while this movie definitely shows that, this movie also shows Napoleon was such a little asshole, and I love how Joaquin Phoenix plays him. Every time Napoleon is arguing with someone, part of the French government, anytime he's like talking with his wife, the movie just shows how pathetic this guy is and how he just has this like sense of wanting to feel bigger than he is. No pun intended. There aren't too many jokes about his height in this movie, which I do think is probably good because like those jokes could go either way, probably a little played out. But I just love how Joaquin Phoenix is able to play this role with such comedic effect, especially because it's something that you probably wouldn't expect. Like if someone told you, "Hey, there's this new movie Napoleon out, and it's about how much of a pathetic loser he was behind the scenes, and how like he would always yell at his wife, like, why don't you love me? Why are you going to other men to get satisfaction?" Even though he never leaves his wife, I think people wouldn't expect that. And I do think the choice by Phoenix to just go over the top, it honestly feels like the performance he had 23 years earlier when he did Gladiator with Ridley Scott, when he played Commodus. Commodus was also a sniveling little twerp. And in this movie, Napoleon is also a sniveling little twerp, just maybe a little bit smarter because the movie definitely doesn't shy away from showing how ruthless and how threatening this guy was on the battlefield. And when Napoleon is on the battlefield, Joaquin Phoenix is in it. He's locked in. You can see why this guy was such a threatening force, why armies all over Europe did not want to mess with him. But yeah, whenever this guy's behind the scenes, I think Joaquin Phoenix does such a good job of like, there are just scenes where like, where he's just talking with Josephine, he'll just start being like, meh, meh, meh. And it had me dying in a theater away because it's just so awkward. There are sex scenes between Napoleon and Josephine. Some of the most non-erotic sex scenes I think you could possibly imagine. Like just the weirdest relationship you'll ever have. There's a scene where Napoleon tells Josephine when he's about to go out to battle, "Do not bathe because I want to smell your scent when I get back." And it really is funny how Joaquin Phoenix plays this role. Vanessa Kirby plays Empress Josephine, the woman who eventually marries Napoleon Bonaparte. Vanessa Kirby is very good, even though her screen time is very, very limited. The movie definitely, in its 2.5-hour runtime, it definitely spends more time on Napoleon and battles, and Napoleon and his like and his conflict with the French government. And I maybe would have liked to see a little bit more between Napoleon and Josephine, because I think those scenes are fun. I think Vanessa Kirby is really, really great, where like she never has like the Lady Macbeth-esque style to her, where like, oh, you can tell she's very clearly plotting, but you can tell because it's someone like Napoleon, she absolutely has him around her finger, and that's so much fun. I think Vanessa Kirby is one of the more interesting actresses we have working today. She hasn't been like in the, I think since like Mission Impossible Fallout, she's just starting to become like a really big like household name among major movie fans, and I think it is fun seeing her in more roles like this. I know this role was originally supposed to go to Jodie Comer, who you might have seen in The Last Duel, but I think Josephine is I think Vanessa Kirby is really, really great. Jack Pinchuk says Napoleon and Josephine have a healthier relationship for Joaquin Phoenix than his relationship in Gladiator. I mean, it's healthier in the way that it's not incest like it is in Gladiator, but it's still not the healthiest relationship in the world. Also, Jack says, also Vanessa Kirby is great. Jack Pinchuk, #1 Vanessa Kirby fan in the world that I know of. But yeah, Vanessa Kirby is very, very good in this role. I wasn't too invested in the scenes where we're really getting into like the French politics. This movie takes place right after the decapitation of Marie Antoinette, which this movie opens with her getting decapitated. Phenomenal scenes. That's the tone of the movie. But I wasn't too invested in seeing like, oh, what is Napoleon going to do for France? How are his political opponents going to respond to that? And I don't think the movie was that invested. And whenever that happens, my thought is always like, Well, if the movie isn't that invested, why should I be that invested? Nothing too interesting. I don't really remember any of the characters that are Napoleon's main political opponents. I realize my camera is blurry, so I'm going to fix that real quick. Let me just take some swaps. Sorry, guys. Oh, all better. But yeah, I wasn't too invested in those scenes, and I wish there was maybe a few more scenes dedicated to Napoleon and Josephine's relationship, Napoleon being frustrated that he cannot create an heir. And I also wish there maybe could have had some more scenes really tackling the huge battle scenes, which are definitely the main plus of this movie. Like I said, Ridley Scott knows how to direct a battle scene. He knows how to make your movies feel big. And whenever Napoleon is on the battlefield fighting off his enemies, I am super invested. Okay, I shouldn't say I'm super invested because at the end of the day, I would be more invested if I cared more about like what the stakes would be if Napoleon wins this battle or whether he loses it. But at the same time, it's such great eye candy in a way where you're just watching a master of his craft just direct these huge scale fights, and it feels really great. I've always said medieval like big epic battles in like medieval times are always just in a way just a little bit more interesting than like big like battles in like modern times. I think it's just because swords and sandals just feel like more cinematically interesting. But yeah, and I just think Ridley Scott just does such a phenomenal job. This is not a spoiler. This movie ends with the historic Battle of Waterloo, and it's a 20-minute battle scene. And just watching how Ridley Scott directs this, watching all like the different waves it goes through the plot, all like the ups and downs Napoleon goes through during this battle, incredible. Ridley Scott does a phenomenal job with this. And something I also want to say is, I think the movie does a really good job at capturing the era of this film really well. Like, I think the costumes are excellent. I think the set, like whenever we are at Napoleon's palace, like this huge castle, like I felt like this castle was like in its own way a character in the movie, just because of how at home Napoleon felt and how small he seemed in this castle compared to everything else, and how whenever he's yelling, you can tell like how big of a country France was at the time, and how even though he was the one in charge, and when you have scenes of him taking the crown and saying, I found this in the gutter and now I place it on my head, you can always feel like, okay, these people don't entirely respect him. And the last element I really want to tackle this movie is the score by Martin Phipps is incredible. Like whether it's not even like the grand, insane, like orchestral pieces of music that this movie tackles, but I also just love like the like quieter moments in the score, whether it's just whether you're just going through like the like in a way like lower class sections of France, you're seeing the world of the citizens. And yeah, I think some of those scenes and the score that plays during those is some of the most fun, whether it's just like the little like flute sounds, whether it's the like violins. I think that is handled extremely well. And yeah, Martin Phipps is not a composer I'm super well versed in or knowledgeable of, but he knocked the score out of the park with this one, as Ridley Scott movies normally do. I can't really think of many Ridley Scott movies where I'm like, oh, the score is like not great in that. Nor can I really think of one where I'm like, oh, the technical elements of that movie aren't that great. But yeah, that just about does everything I wanted to say about Napoleon. If I were to rate it on a scale of 0 to 10, we rate movies here on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, 0 being awful and 10 being incredible. If I were to rate it on a scale of 0 to 10, I think I'm going to give it 7.5. I think this was a good movie. Maybe wanted it to be a little better. I think the script could have maybe used a little bit more polish up. Definitely a little long, but it's not really like, I think the movie runtime was too long. I think just it was focusing on things that I don't think were the most important. But man, in the ways this movie shines, it really shines. Like I said, I think Joaquin Phoenix is excellent. I think Ridley Scott directs the heck out of this movie. If you have the chance, I would really recommend you do go see it in the theaters, even though I don't think it's amazing. I just think filmmakers like Ridley Scott, we don't have many filmmakers like him left, where you watch a movie by him and it just feels like an event. And watching this movie in the theater, I felt like an event. So if you have the chance, please go see this in theaters. And if not, I do think it would be a worthy stream when it does come on Apple TV. But yeah, we are going to be going right into our next movie. Jack says just wait until the 4-hour director's cut hits Apple TV Plus. Yeah, Ridley Scott, no stranger to director's cuts, whether it is Blade Runner, Kingdom of Heaven, or any other movie. Yeah, I think the fact this movie wasn't 4 hours speaks that yeah, we're probably going to be getting a director's cut in the very near future. But yeah, I say we head right into our second review of the night, and that being Wish. This is the latest Disney film directed by Chris Buck and Fawn Vera Sunthorn. Want to make sure I get that name right. This film takes place in a tell me if you heard this in a Disney movie. This film takes place in the magical kingdom of Rosas, and there is a king there by the name of King Magnifico. King Magnifico has the power to grant anyone's wish, and once a month, when someone turns 18, you send your wish into King Magnifico, and he will decide whether or not he believes that wish should be granted. When you do give away your wish, you actually forget what the wish you were going to be given, and then King Magnifico kind of decides whether he believes that wish is worthy or not. We open on a character, a young girl by the name of Asha. She hasn't quite turned 18, but she wants to go and work for King Magnifico to hopefully get her grandpa's wish. And his only wish is to essentially create an idea in someone to create a song or something to essentially inspire the people that listen to it to go on and do great things. King Magnifico thinks this idea is a little dangerous, and Asha gets very mad, so she decides not to go and work with King Magnifico. And little does she know, a star follows her along, and suddenly she has the power to grant the wishes of other people. In terms of Disney movies, I definitely think this one. I hate to use this as an insult because there's really no other way to say this. It feels like a Disney movie I would have seen in 2007, and by that I mean this doesn't feel original at all. Like this feels a very much like been there, done that sort of fairy tale. Like, oh, here are these characters that are literally wishing upon a star. And yeah, it's Disney. Like, we do kind of like that familiarity, but we want that magic to still be there. We want that feeling of something fresh there, and there just really isn't anything there with this movie. And I do think that is part of the reason why, if I'm being honest, I wasn't that big a fan of it. I didn't really care about Asha or any of the other main characters. Like, aside from Asha, you also have her other friends who want their wishes granted. They have one friend whose wish has already been granted, and they kind of like make fun of him because they say, oh, he's been a little bit boring now that he doesn't have his aspirations there. Which like it sounds meaner than I made it sound. It's really not like that bad. And I do think his character is probably the most interesting because late in the movie when King Magnifico says, hey, if you figure out where Asha is and turn her in, you will get rewarded. When you learn what sort of happens there, I think that is a little bit interesting. King Magnifico is not that interesting of a villain. Like he's your typical mustache twirling, like slightly more powerful guy. I do think Chris Pine, who does voice him, does do a lot with him. And Chris Pine is just one of those actors where even if the part is super underdeveloped or super thin, I think he does have the ability to have fun with it. And I do think he does have a lot of fun. Ariana DeBose voices the main lead of Asha. She's okay. Alan Tudyk voices Asha's like talking goat, I want to say. And if I'm being honest, Alan Tudyk is just doing the thing I think we've seen in a lot of these other Disney movies, like oh, my voice is so low, so I'm going down like this. Like, I like Alan Tudyk, but I think this shtick is just getting a little bit too old for me. And it definitely feels like something that is meant for the really, really young kids in the crowd. So if you do have young kids, I'm sure they'll like it. But as an adult, there's really nothing to enjoy about the humor of this movie. The songs are nice for what they are, but nothing terribly memorable. I remember watching the movie, I was like, okay, there's no songs that I'm like annoyed by. And I remember even during the movie, I was like, this sounds like nice music, which like I think when it comes to a lot of Disney movies, like we give big passes to some of them that do have these really memorable songs. And this one has good songs, but it doesn't have memorable ones. And I think that's kind of the issue. Like there's nothing that's really gonna get stuck in your ear or anything. There's really like not like there are a few scenarios where like I remember when the songs played, and I guess those do kind of become a little bit emotional, but I think in general they're just not that memorable, and I think that is a big issue. I think probably the biggest issue with this movie is the animation is stylistic, but visually it looks awful. It looks like it was really trying to capture like this storybook feel in a way of kind of like, if I were to describe it to another movie, it's kind of like what Puss in Boots: The Last Wish tried to do, where it looks a little like cell shaded in a way. But while that movie, it's fast, it's like really high energy. This one, this one is a slower movie. This one, you're looking at the characters a lot more, and when you really just and when you have this like cell shaded style, and you see how and you have this slower animation, you really just see how kind of like undetailed everything is, and everything just feels kind of flat. Like all the characters in this movie feel like characters you would see in another Disney movie. Like one of Asha's friends looks exactly like Kristoff in Frozen. Like it's not even funny. Like when he shows up, I'm like, I feel like you just copy pasted Kristoff, made him a little bit skinnier, and boom, there's your new character. And it just felt lazy. It's not that appealing to the eyes. It just, there's nothing like, I think even if this movie looked something like Tangled or looked something like Frozen, I would probably enjoy it a little more. But the animation I just felt was really just kind of butt ugly and just looked cheap. If I'm being honest, like I said in my Letterboxd review, this looks like a really nice indie game I would download on my PlayStation 4, which, like, for a PlayStation 4 game, it looks nice, but for a Disney movie, for an animated movie made by the biggest film studio in the world, it's kind of disappointing the movie looks like this. The world is fun and creative, but you aren't really given enough time to invest in what the filmmakers are doing. Like the idea of this evil king who has this power to grant wishes, like that could be really creative. That could be really, really fun. And you could go a lot of different ways, but the movie just doesn't go those ways. And with this movie being having a 90-minute runtime, at the very least, like you don't have the complaint of like, oh, I'm so bored. But at the same time, you're like, I wish this world was just a little bit more well developed. And I think that's the big thing about Wish. Like, I definitely think this is a good idea for a movie, but man, it needed a little bit more heart. It just needed a little bit more creativity, because what we have, it really just kind of feels like empty calories, especially for an animated movie. If I were to give this movie a scale out of, if I were to give this movie a score out of 0 to 10, I'm going smack dab in the middle. I'm gonna go 5. I know some people might be like, oh, it sounded like you were kind of trashing the movie. It sounds like you should have gone lower. And that's the thing. Like, I think aside from the animation, there's nothing I really dislike about this movie, but it's just going for the, like, really just middle of the road animated film. Like, you see it. And as I'm doing this review, I'm struggling to remember the things I didn't automatically write down when I left the theater, because it really just kind of feels like a nothing film. And I hate to be someone that reviews movies like that, because I like to try and say more about like what I did or didn't like. But I've always said, like, mediocre movies like these are sometimes the hardest movies to talk about. And yeah, there really just isn't that. There really is just nothing special about this one. If you have kids, that's really the only reason I could say you should go see this in theaters. If not, this is not a Disney movie that I think appeals to wider audiences. There's nothing really profound it's trying to say. And yeah, if I'm being honest, I was pretty disappointed by this one. But yeah, those are our 2 reviews for the night. Napoleon, Wish. If you saw them, let me know what you thought and whether you agree or disagree with me. Thank you all for watching Cinemaster's reviews. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the video store. We are putting out phenomenal content every single week. Want to promote the Hit Stick, which is our new NFL show. Nazaria is doing a lot of great things over there. But yeah, next week we are going to be reviewing, I believe, I'm going to have to look at the schedule one more time, but I believe we are reviewing Maestro, the new Bradley Cooper film, and Dream Scenario, the new Nicolas Cage movie, which that looks like proto Charlie Kaufman. And if you know me, you know how much I love Charlie Kaufman films, and I'm totally down for that. But yeah, thank you all for watching. And as always, watch more movies.
And the award for most vapid film review of the century goes to...
Okay, movie review. Okay, I thought it was beauty.
And he's now in cinema hell, where one day we'll all be reunited.
This is me at the Regal Cinema crying as I did through much of the film.